From the Goldberg-Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg-Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
It is 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Justin Myers with you. The Portland Trailblazers go down to the Phoenix Suns last night, 109-88. Scoot Henderson did lead the Blazers with 17 points. A fantastic weekend of college football as the Oregon Ducks are the Fiesta Bowl champions. 45-6 victory over the Liberty Flames. Bo Nix finishes the season as the single-season passing completion percentage leader in college football history. Oregon State went down earlier in the weekend, 40-8 to Notre Dame, and the national championship game is set. Washington gets a thrilling victory over the Texas Longhorns. They will advance to the national title game in Houston, Texas. Well, they will match up against the Michigan Wolverines, who take down the Alabama Crimson Tide. It is the first show of 2024. Do we have guests? No. Do we have a producer? Kind of. Is everybody in the world sick? No worries. We've got a ton of football to talk about because RCM starts right now at 620 Rip City Radio.
The most transparent show in Portland is Rip City Mornings with Justin Myers, here on 620 Rip City Radio.
And a very happy 2024. It is RCM. I am your host, Justin Myers. As I mentioned during the update, everybody's sick. There's all sorts of bugs all around us as super producer Brendan is out. He is in health and safety protocols. Normally on Tuesdays, our good friend Devon Pouncey would join us live in studio. He has got a flu bug as well. He is out. Michael Shacker is joining us live from his lair as he is keeping us on the air.
Not sick.
We're not sick, but definitely not coming around this studio anytime soon because, well, there are massive bugs all over the place. But if there was ever a day, and let me tell you, if there was ever a day for me to come on and talk to you all for just a good chunk of time with no guests, well, today would be the day because I cannot remember a football weekend like the weekend we had. And while, yes, it was an extended weekend, and also it was just, a couple of hours ago we were wrapping up the Sugar Bowl and wrapping up the Rose Bowl and wrapping up the Fiesta Bowl and wrapping up, for the most part, college football in the year 2023. Yes, there is one more game, but college football, for the most part, is wrapped up. We have got a ton of stuff to dive into. We are going to be focusing on everything in the world of college football that came up this weekend. Why? Because between Oregon State entering into a new era of life, Oregon finishing what was a 12-2 season but felt a little bit meh because after they won the Fiesta Bowl and Bo Nix walks away as the all-time completion percentage leader in college football history, Oregon fans then had to sit back and watch Washington ascend to the place where Oregon thought they were going to be this season. Plus, over this last weekend, we saw Georgia put a 63-3 beatdown on undefeated Florida State. Does that diminish what Florida State did for the season? Does that prove that the committee got it right? I have thoughts on this. Speaking of Georgia, Kirby Smart came out and said, we got to do something about these opt-outs. We got to do something about these opt-outs. We got to do something about these bowl games. So we are definitely going to dive into, do the bowl games need to be fixed? Do the bowl games need to be eliminated? Do the bowl games need to just be put in their proper perspective? Which is what they are, right? They're a handful of exhibition games that are there to fill time during the holidays. No longer are bowl games a reward for a great season, which is what bowl games were intended to be. Right? Bowl games were intended to be a reward for a successful season. Well, you can hardly say that 6-6, especially the way that some teams will schedule, and even sometimes, because there are too many bowl games scheduled, sometimes 5-win teams get in, but a 6-6 team, that is hardly a successful season that is in need of a reward. So we'll dive into where bowl games were, where they are, and where they are potentially headed. Opt-outs. Does college football need to fix opt-outs? When you looked this weekend, clearly Clearly, the Orange Bowl, once a major factor in college football. For years, decades, the Orange Bowl was usually somehow, some way integral into who's going to be the national champion. But with Florida State saying, you know what, if you're not going to invite us to our party, we're not showing up to your JV game. 19-plus players for Florida State opted out. And yeah, even if they all played, and even if Jordan Travis was healthy, would Georgia probably have beat their doors in? Probably. But regardless, this is where we are. How do you fix opt-outs? Are opt-outs just a necessary evil? Will the market correct itself? We definitely have thoughts on that, and we'll take a look, as I mentioned, now the pathways of Oregon and Oregon State as they now go separate as opposed to the 100-plus years that these two programs' pathways lied together. Because after the Sun Bowl wrapped up and after the Fiesta Bowl wrapped up, and that is the end of the season for Oregon and Oregon State, and now they go on very different paths. So we'll take a look back at the season that was, the legacy of Bo Nix, where Oregon football is after a 12-win disappointing season. Is that where we are at? But that's the reality. Because rivalries matter more than anything else in college football. Rivalries matter. Oregon has had successful seasons where they did not win the conference. Oregon has had all-time great seasons where they did not win the conference. The difference was in those seasons where you look back at, say, 2021, when Oregon beat Ohio State on the road at the Horseshoe. Who won the conference that year? Utah. Doesn't hurt as much. Not rival. You go back to what I believe is the greatest Oregon team ever assembled, which is 2012. And they lost that game at Autzen Stadium. But they didn't lose to Washington. They lost to Stanford. Stanford would go on and win the conference. And while they have had disappointing endings and heartbreak losses, nothing stings worse than when your rival not only beats you, but then wins the conference and then wins their playoff game and is now heading to the national championship. How much does Washington's win affect the state of Oregon football? Because that's how college football works. That's why rivalry is so important. Because if Oregon would have lost to Utah and Utah was playing for a national championship, most Oregon fans would probably be sitting here today going, hey, 12 wins? What a year. Look at the trajectory from where Oregon looked to be when Mario Cristobal marched right out of town in the most awkward bowl press conference of all time. And then a year later, double-digit wins, beating North Carolina in the Holiday Bowl. And then a year later, 11 regular season wins, Pac-12 championship game, 12 wins with a Fiesta Bowl victory. But it feels a little bit meh, doesn't it? The kids say mid, right? Feels a little bit mid for Oregon football today. Yeah, it was fun waking up early. Now I'm an early riser as it is, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. It was one of the first years. Yeah, New Year's Eve, I didn't make it to midnight. I celebrated Mountain Time Zone. Me and the good people of Denver celebrated ringing in 2024 together because I was falling asleep on my couch. So I went to bed early on New Year's Eve, and I woke up ready to watch the Fiesta Bowl at 10 a.m., and it was fun. Yeah, Liberty showed up for a minute, and then all of a sudden Oregon was like, oh, that's right. We are going to crush you now. After an initial drive that showed Liberty take an early lead and is like, oh, boy, are we going to have another Boise State situation on our hands? And then Oregon was like, yep, no, boom. And Bo Nix went ballistic. Tez Johnson went ballistic. The defense went ballistic. Liberty had no business being in that game. And Oregon walks away with a very comfortable Fiesta Bowl championship. Bo Nix walks away with a record that may stand for years and years and years, may get broken next year. You never know. When Mac Jones set that record 2 years ago, it looked like, man, this one might stick around for a while. And it felt pretty good in the morning, and watching Bo Nix get his curtain call, and again, later on in the program, we're going to talk about the legacy of Bo Nix. An unbelievable 2 years, an unbelievable story. One of those special players that it's almost hard to put into words what Bo Nix meant to Oregon football. Because we've talked about this a ton on this program. The fact that Oregon has gone in, 8 years from Helfrich to Taggart to Cristobal to now Dan Lanning. 4 coaches. 4 coaches in an 8-year span. That will destroy a program. It will destroy a program. Yet, 3 of those 4 coaches coached in the Pac-12 championship game. 2 of those coaches actually won the thing. And other than Willie Taggart, all 3 of those coaches have won 10-plus games. Why is that? Well, obviously the strength of Oregon football, the strength of the financial backing of Phil Knight, the strength of Oregon being innovative. There are plenty of teams that may have been better at the transfer portal, but Oregon's right there with them. Because I don't know the quarterback that was playing for Washington last night. I don't know if there's a better transfer portal story than Bo Nix, other than Michael Penix, which, again, more on that coming up later on in the program as well. But the legacy of Bo Nix is going to be an interesting one. Because, as I mentioned, rivalry means a lot. And for a guy that came in, that Oregon needed, because if Bo Nix doesn't transfer, if Bo Nix sits there and goes, you know what? I'm going to stick it out at Auburn. I am from Alabama. I'm an Auburn legacy. Yeah, this whole coaching change has not been right for me. This fan base has been just begging me to transfer. And Bo Nix decides, yeah, I'm out. Or Bo Nix says, maybe I'll go to Florida State. If he goes to one of a dozen of other places he could have gone. Where's Oregon football today? How do we feel about Dan Lee? I have a hunch they would be somewhat successful. Don't know if they would be at 12 wins. So a lot of that's on Dan Lanning, and a lot of that is on Bo Nix. He was a special, special player to don the Oregon uniform. But no real significant victory in his 2-year career. We talk about signature moments, right, of great players. You go back to Joey Harrington. That Fiesta Bowl victory against Colorado. Signature victory. Obviously, Marcus Mariota. Rose Bowl victory against Florida State. Darren Thomas. Rose Bowl victory against Wisconsin. Justin Herbert. That Utah Pac-12 championship game, and then followed up by a win in the Rose Bowl to walk it off in 2019. Significant victories from all-time greats. And while Bo Nix is up there in terms of talent and ability, and who knows what he's going to be at the next level, one thing he does have he does not have that signature victory. And again, Fiesta Bowl, not his fault. It's not like Bo Nix came out and said, you know what, hey, that was a tough Pac-12 championship game loss. Please give me a cupcake in Liberty so that I could set some records, have a nice cakewalk on my way into the NFL. No. That was a loophole in the bowl system. But it is going to be an interesting legacy, and we won't know for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. When we look back and talk about, remember those 2 years with Bo Nix at Oregon? And those of us who were there will be like, he was special. That guy had something. And people that weren't were like, couldn't beat Washington. It's like, yeah, you weren't there. You don't know. So like I said, a lot to dive into over the next 3 hours here on this program as we ring in 2024 in style. Haven't even mentioned the NFL, which we got a lot of NFL to talk about as well. So buckle up, kids, because we have got 3 hours of power here on Rip City Mornings. But before we dive into all of that, I do want to tell you about the good folks at DeBella, right? They're the official home improvement partner of the Portland Timbers. Portland weather, it can be brutal. As evidence, everybody around here is getting sick. And this winter, might even be colder than last year, but you can save up to 30% on your energy bills with DeBella. That's right. They take care of your roofing, your windows, your siding, all those renovations, and can save you up to 30% on your energy bills. Plus, if your roof is leaking or just aging, they can get you a free quote right now at DeBella. Plus, now is the perfect time to connect with them because there's an amazing finance opportunity. 0 down, no payments until 2025. That's on approved credit. 0 down, no payments until 2025. We are just 2 days into 2024. That's all on approved credit for your roofing, siding, windows, or bathroom renovation. Visit DeBella, DABELLA.US right now for your free, no obligation appointment, and they can make upgrading your home super easy. DeBella, the official home improvement partner of the Portland Timbers. More on the big college football weekend coming up next.
Don't turn your mic on. Friendly reminder, don't turn your mic on. I am so sorry. My timing was off. I thought it was live read, then commercial break. My bad, and I also muted my computer so I don't have double feed of you during the segment. So I didn't hear what you said there. And I'm sorry about the cutting you off. Cool. And you have more live reads than an afternoon show. They haven't had one in a while. Not like in segment like what you're doing. He voices a lot of stuff. His voice is on a lot of spots. It's horrible. Maybe we need to get you to host the suite at a Blazer game. And then you can meet him. And then you see a Blazer game. Don't feel bad. They've never really sold 620, no matter what the format is. Short break, back in 2. You threw a 4-minute break. I think they count your live read as a spot, so it's really a 5-minute break. Can you adjust the camera? It's got a diagonal shot from last night.
Alright.
Get you straight on. I like that Scott Tom's in your background. Let me do a quick flash. Perfect.
Alright.
Yeah, it's Scott Tom, DJ.
Who's that?
DJ works on the Eagle, and that bomb thing's been like by the back door for many years. So I just brought it in to be in the shot.
I mean, it certainly is the end of the road. As we wrapped up New Year's Day, 100-plus years of tradition. College football games being played on New Year's Day. And it was last night or yesterday afternoon or the full slate of games that was going on, the last as we have known college football in the bowl format. Because I watched that Oregon Liberty game going like, I don't know if they really need to be playing this game. I saw that Georgia-Florida State game in the Orange Bowl, right? Because usually in years past, since we went to the 4-team playoff, and really even before that when the BCS came along, and a little bit before that when a thing called the Bowl Coalition came along, and they elevated certain bowls, right? Just like we elevated the Power Five. The Power Five was never a thing until we just decided, these are the power conferences now. All right, what designates a power conference? Nothing. We just say so. It's like, oh, okay. But can a non-Power 5 conference ever become a power? No, can't. It's a power conference. Okay, so, but there's got to be like some sort of defining term, right? No, we just decide these are the power conferences. And then it used to be 6, because back in the day, Miami and Virginia Tech were in the Big East, and then obviously conference realignment happened, and they end up in the ACC. So the Big East fell off. You are no longer power. And the Big East was like, what? I mean, we were a power. Yeah, you're not a power conference anymore. Is there a way to get? No, there isn't. And then obviously we saw the end of the Pac-12, which Pac-12 still officially has one more game because the Washington Huskies, I mean, of course, it would be in the final year of the Pac-12 that this conference would have USC win its bowl game, Oregon dismantle Liberty, Washington get a win over Texas, play for a national championship. Bo Nix, Michael Penix look like the best players in college football. Of course, that would be the year that the Pac-12 would be like, we're going to go kaput. So now it's not Power 5 anymore. Now it's like Power 4. And again, well, what makes it a power? We say so. Who is we? We don't know. Just the collective community of people who talk into microphones, whether they are on the radio like me or attached to a lapel on TV or in a headset. It's like, it's Power 4 now. It's like, we did the same thing with bowl games a long, long time ago. Gather around, kids, because we need to have a discussion about bowl games. Because while it was fun watching Oregon play one last game, that was fun yesterday morning, and even for a minute, you kind of felt like, oh, this one kind of, and then you realize, oh, this game doesn't matter. And also, Liberty has no business being in this game, and the fact that we are playing what would equate in the regular season to a paycheck game. You know, one of those games where it's like Liberty shows up, they get walloped by 40. Oregon writes them a nice, $800,000 check and says, hey, enjoy your locker room upgrades. We're going on to bigger and better things. But instead of doing that in September, well, we did it on January 1, very early in the morning with very few people in the stands. Tip of the cap to everybody that showed up to the Fiesta Bowl. But it was unimportant. So let's travel back in time, shall we? And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but it's important to know kind of how we got here. Like what? Why are we playing bowl games? Like what? Because back way in the day, national championship was not a thing. You would play college football in your conference, and if you won your conference, you were rewarded for winning a championship. Not for winning 6 games, not for winning 8 games, but you had to win your conference. And if you won your conference, you were rewarded with a trip to a sunny destination. And that sunny destination may be Pasadena. It may be Phoenix. It may be Dallas with the Cotton Bowl, even though sometimes the Cotton Bowl, not exactly sunny. It might be New Orleans. It might be sunny Miami. But you would win your conference. And you would get rewarded with a trip to a bowl game. Maybe even Tampa or Orlando or heck, even El Paso. Even though I have a hunch most Beaver fans never want to see El Paso ever again after what happened on Friday. And all of a sudden, just like, again, these are all cautionary tales that I keep telling everybody. You guys keep thinking, oh, Justin's got his tinfoil hat on again. Nah, these are cautionary tales because I know the history of this great sport. Because for years, all you would have would be your conference champion would go to a bowl game. John Elway, one of the greatest players in Pac-12 history, never played in a bowl game. Why? Because only one or maybe two teams from any conference got to go to a bowl game. Well, and then a thing happened on the way to 2024. You know, back in the 70s and then into the 80s, a thing that was a net positive, but ultimately might have been the biggest catalyst to how we got here. Cable TV came into our lives. Boy, do I love cable TV. What a time growing up. If you were my age, if you are in your 40s or a little bit older, man, what a time when you finally got cable TV. The screen is going to be clear every time. We don't have to adjust the antenna, and I've got, at then, 30 channels. So cable TV came into our lives, and ESPN came into our lives, and ESPN is like, hey, these bowl games are great. How do we get some of those? And they're like, yeah, sorry, ESPN. You're a piddly little cable company. These bowl games are played on networks, my friend. And ESPN said, well, what if we just make up new ones? And college football was like, you can just make up new ones? Like, yeah, we'll just make them up. And we'll broadcast them, and we'll get a lot of money, and we'll pay the team. And the teams are like, that's great. So you saw in the 80s and the 90s, bowl games getting a bit out of hand, right? It went from being about 11, 12, 15 bowl games to all of a sudden every 6 and 6 team got to go to a bowl game. Why? Well, because college football back then did this thing based upon tradition where from Thanksgiving to New Year's, they didn't have games. Well, guess what? That's not good for TV networks. It's not good for TV networks to not have games. Like, wait, the Big Ten's just done? The week before Thanksgiving, when are they going to play again? The Rose Bowl. That's New Year's. Wait a minute. We got to put something on TV, guys. So they created these bowl games. The Blockbuster Bowl and the Car Care Bowl and the Music City Bowl and on and on and on. To where we get the Gasparilla Bowl. Or the Tax Slayer Bowl. I believe we had a Tax Slayer Bowl. A Pop-Tart Bowl, a Cheez-It Bowl. A battle of crunchy snacks. Whether it is you're on Team Pop-Tart, Team Cheez-It, or Team Frosted Flake. And these were moneymakers. And they were something to put on TV in the month of December. And then we became obsessed. Really, it started in the 70s with a bit of a dispute as to who was the actual national champion. And then, again, when cable TV came along, we're like, whoa. We get to watch all these other teams. Back in the day, you watched teams that were close to you. If you were on the West Coast, you watched USC, and you watched Notre Dame, because Notre Dame was always on TV. There was no run for a national championship. Heck, for a long time, they declared the national champion before the bowl games were even played. Then somebody was like, this is a little bit silly. How about we play the bowl games, then we'll vote on the national champion. Sounds good. Then they were like, wait. Sometimes when we vote on these national championships, we get two teams. Give it to them both. They're like, we don't split national championships and all that. So then we got to the BCS. BCS came into our lives in the 90s, elevating certain bowls based upon financial and contractual agreements, which is how you got, which the Rose Bowl was always an elevated bowl. It was the granddaddy of them all. That's how you got the Fiesta Bowl into your lives. Fiesta Bowl went up, Cotton Bowl went down. Why? They made a deal with the BCS. So now you got these BCS bowls. And, well, we always kind of knew that the Holiday Bowl and the Insight Bowl and the Blockbuster Bowl and the Independence Bowl and the Freedom Bowl and all, we always knew they were not the same as the Rose Bowl, but it was still, hey, it's a bowl game. And then some bowl games got labeled. Those are BCS bowl games. Those are elevated bowl games. So essentially you created a JV game. Nobody wants to admit it, but it's true. You created a JV game. Then obviously we moved from the BCS system to the 14 playoff. And when the 14 playoff came around, there were still New Year's Six bowls, right? And then these players got savvy. These players got smart. And they're like, if I can't win a national championship, why am I going to be playing in these bowl games? I might be a first rounder. Why am I going to attempt to destroy my knee ligaments when I have got an NFL career on the horizon? And there were a couple of people, and it started with Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, and they opted out. It was smart. And then, like everything else, opt-outs became trendy. And then the transfer portal came in, and ultimately you get a 63-3 Florida State, Georgia Orange Bowl that nobody cared about. Was that the death of bowl games? Sure, they're going to stumble around for a while, but was that Orange Bowl a game? I mean, think about everything that went into that game of what we knew of college football before. Florida State, without knowing what happened yesterday, Florida State could have went into that Orange Bowl with their backup quarterback, with 0 opt-outs, beaten Georgia, and potentially won, if not outright, a share of the national title. But instead, the players at Florida State knew what we all knew, which was, yeah, you might win a share of the national title, but nobody's going to recognize it, and it doesn't count. You didn't get invited to the cool kids party, so you took your ball and you went home. And it's hard to blame the players at Florida State for opting out. What's the point? Do you get extra NIL if you play into a bowl game? Do you get extra per diem? Where's the benefit? You've already got your school paid for. You've already got a full ride scholarship. Even if you are a 5th, 6th, 7th, or even if you're not going to get drafted, what's the point in playing in this bowl game? Financially, on paper. Because there is a point to maybe playing in these games and competing. And it kind of shows what kind of program you have with Oregon having Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Brandon Dorless, all these guys playing in their bowl game as opposed to opting out. Even Georgia, and they had a good chunk of opt-outs as well. But Georgia showed up to the Orange Bowl ready to play. Florida State pouted, kicked rocks. Don't blame them. I'd have pouted too. And then after the game, Kirby Smart's like, we got to do something about these bowl games. So here are some thoughts that I put together over the weekend. And I've mentioned this a handful of times. We are going to a 12-team playoff next year, and it is going to make bowl games even less important. They're not even important as it sits right now. They're for fun. It's entertainment purposes only. These are exhibition games. Sure, coaches can find ways to say, hey, we got to secure some momentum. It's like, I've seen plenty of teams lose their bowl game in embarrassing fashion, bounce back, play great the next year. Case in point, 2006 Oregon football. 2006 Oregon football had a ho-hum year. They limped to the end of the season, got into the Vegas Bowl, and got whooped by BYU. Absolutely whooped by BYU at the end of the 2006 season. A lot of people were questioning, does Bellotti know, is his time over? Does Oregon maybe need to make some hard choices? Well, that next year, with the same quarterback that was getting whooped in the Vegas Bowl. Same guy. New offensive coordinator came in. This chubby coach out of New Hampshire that nobody had ever heard of named Chip Kelly. And other than one injury away, was nearly in the national title game. How on earth could they do that if they lost their bowl game? Because the outcomes of these bowl games don't matter. And we're learning more and more now. Used to be, well, if it was the Rose Bowl, if it's the Orange Bowl, well, now the Orange Bowl doesn't even matter because Florida State bounced out. So what happens? Clearly not going to eliminate all these. It's too much money at stake. It's a lot of TV revenue. All this TV revenue money that we keep talking about, right, for all this conference realignment. Yeah, a good chunk of it comes from the TV networks directly in their grant of rights deal, but a lot of that revenue comes from these bowl games. And these bowl games are moneymakers because they all get to say they are charities, and then they slap a corporate sponsor on it. They get a TV rights deal. They get massive tax breaks because they are nonprofit. Teams come in. Players get a gift bag. Schools get $1 million payouts. Everybody makes money. But now moving forward, with opt-outs, with a 12-team playoff, if you were the number 13 team, if you were the last team in, because this argument of number 4 versus number 5, this argument of should Florida State have been in the college football playoff, by the way, they should have. It would have been a much different outcome yesterday, but they should have been in there. Because everybody got the point of the 4-team playoff wrong. Like, what was the point of the 4-team playoff? The whole point of the 4-team playoff was to get to the 2 best teams playing each other for the national title. Washington, Michigan, they're both undefeated. Nobody else is. They're playing for a national title. It kind of worked. But if Alabama wasn't in the game and Michigan beat the tar out of Florida State, we still would have gotten Michigan and Washington playing each other. That's the whole point. It's the whole point of the 4-team playoff. Now, did we get better games? Yeah, we did. Was the committee right? Nah, they weren't right. But now you see Kirby Smart coming out after the game going, we got to do something about these opt-outs. We got to do something about... So, I see 3 options. 3 options with regard to bowl game. Option A, talked about it last week. There's going to be a 12-team playoff, obviously. You may have some sort of tie-in. You create another 12-team playoff underneath it, like an NIT or a group of 5 playoff, and you could declare a group of 5 national champion. So you create a college football version of the NIT. You're like, Justin, who's going to want to play in that? You pay them enough money, they will. Teams still go play in the NIT, don't they? Yeah, because you get paid. Not that much, but you get paid. So there's that option. Then there is the option of how do you get rid of all the opt-outs? Well, you make it financially beneficial for players to show up and play. You give them a payout. We have seen the amount of money that comes in on these bowl games. Hey, you play and participate in this bowl game, $50K. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers. But you make it financial. Players get to show up, and if they participate in the bowl game, they get a check. Christmas bonus, New Year's bonus. Now, you're still going to have opt-outs, but you're not going to have many. $50K in the hand or opt out and look cool. So you make a financially beneficial pay for play. I don't like it in regular season college football, but this is an exhibition. There's a sponsor. There's advertising. Pay for play. You make a financial disincentive. I think I'm using that correctly. Which is essentially, you say, all right, you have a full ride scholarship, Johnny, for your junior year, we have made the Tax Slayer Bowl. If you don't participate in the Tax Slayer Bowl, well, you're going to have to pay back that scholarship. Now, I don't know how legal that is because I'm just spitballing here. Or you do what I think is ultimately going to happen, and just every year we throw up our hands and we hem and we haw, and nothing is going to be changed about it because it's an old relic of college football's past that nobody wants to take out behind the barn and make it kaput. But we're going to a playoff. We're playing. Players are getting NIL. Players are transferring. There's free agency. There are contract negotiations. There should be no more bowl games. Take it out back. Put bowl games out of their misery. Yeah, it was fun watching Bo Nix play for Oregon one last time. But in the end, what was it all for? Fun little afternoon in Phoenix. All right, coming up next, we wrap up hour number one. Mentioned, going to talk about Oregon State. They wrapped up their seasons two very different ways, but now their pathways, they go separately into the college football world. We'll talk about that next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, time to wrap up hour number one. Obviously, a lot of college football to dive into because we left on Friday morning and threw it down to El Paso. There was a football game that was played. Oregon State fans would probably like to forget most of that 40-8 beatdown that the Beavs took at the hands of Notre Dame, and it wrapped up Oregon State's season. And now Oregon State kind of sits back and goes, all right, what do we do from here? But there was I feel like a bit of worry. And while I know Oregon State fans want to hear nothing from this Oregon homer, and I get it, but kind of the theme throughout the show is being realistic about the outcomes of these bowl games. Because I do think it is massively important to put this into perspective. How could you expect any other performance from Oregon State in this bowl game? In all honesty. Like, if you had any realistic view, and I don't want fans to start having realistic views. I am employed, and our whole industry is around because of unrealistic views and unrealistic expectations. That's why we're here. But after that beatdown, I think there might have been some Oregon State fans going like, man, it just gets piling on and piling on and piling on. Well, you didn't have a quarterback. You didn't have a backup quarterback. You didn't have your starting running back. You had massive amounts of opt-outs all over the place. You didn't have your head coach, and you didn't have your new head coach. I remember once talking to former Oregon coach Mike Bellotti talking about bowl games, right? And he had some issues like, they were struggling in winning bowl games, and he was trying to figure it out. And then finally he said, a lot of it just comes down to at the end of the season, does your team want to be there? Now, some of that is coaching. Some of that is culture. Some of that is circumstances. You face a tough loss at the end of the season when you thought you were going to go here and you end up here. Oregon State walked into that game against Washington in a torrential downpour thinking that there's a chance at a Pac-12 championship and a New Year's Six bowl game. That was a week before Thanksgiving. They walk into that. They lose that game in that downpour by 3. Rumors start swirling. They go into the Oregon game, and according to multiple reports, they were told by their head coach, I might be leaving for Michigan State. They get walloped by Oregon. So in a span of 6 days, because remember they played that Washington game on a Saturday night, and by Civil War Friday, in a span of 6 days, that Oregon State team went from, hey, maybe Vegas in a week, to El Paso, Texas, Sun Bowl. No coach. New coach, he's got to work. There is no way, shape, or form any team was going to show up ready to play in that game. And I don't care. You can throw me all the lip service you want. You can throw me all the, there's an opportunity for the young guys, and we're prepared and everything. It's like, no. There was absolutely zero chance Oregon State was going to have any bit of competitiveness in this game. Zero chance. And why should they? It's the biggest juxtaposition in all of football, especially at the highest level. Because what is football? Hey, it is about your teammates. It is about your brothers. It is about putting the collective ahead of the individual. That's what this whole sport is about. That's why the great head coaches make millions and millions of dollars, because they somehow convince 80-some alphas that they are better together than on their own. But then sometimes the business of football comes into play. And if you're Oregon State and you're like, wait, I have been sold, I need to sacrifice. I need to not be an individual. I need to think of the team first, not think of myself first. I need to not be selfish here. Wait a minute. Where's my head coach? His selfish rear end was on a plane to Michigan State. Before the laundry was even done for Civil War, He was on a plane to East Lansing. Okay, got it. So we got a new coach, though, right? Yeah. He's worrying about the other guys they're going to bring in and try to take your position. Okay. How about the coaches that are coaching in this game? Yeah, a lot of them are filling out their resumes as we speak because they don't know if they're going to Michigan State. They don't know if they're sticking around. They don't know if they're going to be offered jobs. They don't know if they're going to be on their way to Division II after this. They just don't quite know. So hard to imagine that their hearts weren't exactly in preparing Oregon State for a Sun Bowl matchup against Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame probably didn't want to be there either. And Notre Dame had their opt-outs. But you know what Notre Dame did have? They're their head coach. Marcus Freeman's there on the sideline. And sure, probably more focused on recruiting, more focused on the transfer portal. Riley Leonard's coming in next year. But at least Notre Dame had a leader, had some sort of guiding light. Oregon State had no chance in this game, gang. They had no chance. Nor should they have. And by the way, Trent Bray should not have been coaching in that game. Yes, he was the defense coordinator. Sure, he was then elevated to head coach. He should not have been coaching in that game because you look at what Mike Elko, the new coach at Texas A&M, is doing. You look at all these coaches across the country. They may not have been already on the staff, but you know what? They were focused on building their own staff, bringing in transfer portal players, recruiting high school players, salvaging what was left of a program that went from the highest high to the lowest low in a matter of about 2 weeks. Do not put too much into this game if you're an Oregon State fan. All right, coming up, we got more football talk. The national championship game is set. 2 unbelievable games, and we'll still get into some NFL stuff as well. That's next, 620 Rip City Radio.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
It is 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Happy New Year, everybody. Justin Myers with you. It was a 109-88 loss for the Blazers last night to the Phoenix Suns. Scoot Henderson did lead the way for Portland with 17 points. Earlier in the weekend, Oregon State went down 40-8 in the Sun Bowl, losing to Notre Dame. Oregon walks away a winner, though, in their bowl game. 45-6 beatdown of Liberty. Bo Nix ends as the single-season completion percentage record holder for all of college football. And the national championship of college football is set. And the Pac-12 has one more game as a conference as the Washington Huskies took down the Texas Longhorns in the Sugar Bowl to advance to the title game. In Houston, they will be facing Michigan, who took down Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Coming up, hour number 2 of RCM here on a football-heavy kickoff
The
of
home of the
2024.
OSAA is
That was my
the
fault.
home of the OSAA. It's time for Justin Myers to wake you up here on Rip City Mornings, 620 Rip City Radio.
Yeah, that one's my bad. That one's on me. Thought I had a really cool intro into the hour. Gonna pause for effect. Brain went blank. Happens. Michael Shacker was in his lair. He had to make a decision. Do I hit the button or not? I also told him, I said, hey, Michael, if you hear silence and a thud, go to commercial. So that one, yeah, that one's on me. Everybody else in the building is sick, so super producer Brendan's not with us today. He's in health and safety protocols. Devon Pouncey, who normally joins us each and every Tuesday, he texted me this morning. He's got a flu bug. Michael Shacker smartly staying away. Like I mentioned, he is in his lair. But if there was ever a show to be able to just sit here and chat for a handful of hours, it is today, because obviously spent a ton of time early in the program talking about the weekend that was of college football. We're going to dive into some NFL stuff as well, because it was not just high drama in college football with the national championship picture now set. The 2 semifinals coming down to the final play. But also there was drama in the NFL. Pittsburgh Steelers go up into Seattle and put a beatdown on the Seattle Seahawks, keeping their playoff hopes alive. Seattle now still alive, but needs a little bit of help going into the final week. Questions surrounding Geno Smith. Is he the guy? Questions surrounding Pete Carroll. How significant was that game at home, favored against the Steelers with their third-string quarterback in Mason Rudolph, with your playoff hopes on the line? And after the game, Pete Carroll was saying, we just weren't in the right mindset. That's a problem. And I love Pete Carroll. I think Pete Carroll is one of the best head coaches in all of football, any level. Man's won a Super Bowl and a national championship. Doesn't happen very often. How do you have a team that is a wrong mindset going into the second to last weekend of the year with the playoffs on the line, a home game against a Steelers team that has their third-string quarterback in Mason Rudolph? He's like, we just didn't have the right mindset. That's a problem. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago with the Seahawks, that I compared them to a Hallmark movie, right? And now Christmas has come and gone, New Year's has come and gone, and now we go into the big, dark, cold January where everybody's going to try to maybe drop a couple of LBs, try to shake off some of that holiday cheer that maybe you packed on, like myself, or maybe you're going to have to try to save some money because that Christmas credit card bill is looming, right? And so January is just it's a tough spot. And I've talked about this with those Hallmark Christmas movies. My wife loves them. I'm actually a big fan too. Brings me joy. But the thing with the Hallmark Christmas movie, you can't think about the next day. Yes, did the big city accountant turn around and come back to run an inn in the small town on the Christmas Eve? Yeah. Save the Christmas pageant that's been going on for 80 years in this little town? Yeah. What happens the next day? Don't worry about it. Right? Don't worry about it. It's like great rom-coms. Can't worry about the next day. You got to live in the moment. So I said that about the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. You can't worry about what's ahead. Drew Lock, he had his moment on Monday Night Football. Then the next week, Geno Smith has boom, back-to-back wins. They're sitting, controlling their own destiny with a third-string quarterback in Mason Rudolph and the Steelers coming to Seattle. And then you got to beat the Arizona Cardinals. That's it. You win those two games. You're in the playoffs. Again, back-to-back years. Well, guess what? Unlike the Hallmark Christmas movie where you don't get the next day, you just have to live in the Seahawks next day showed up. And the Pittsburgh Steelers put it on them at Lumen Field. So we'll dive into the full slate of NFL games. We do have the number one seeds for the AFC and the NFC. But going back to last night, what an unbelievable day of football. Now, let me preface what I am about to say, because I still firmly believe that Florida State should have been playing in the national championship semifinals. Firmly believe it. You'll never change my mind. I know why the system was designed the way it was designed, and you will never change my mind. I can understand why people may have a bit of a different opinion, and especially with the outcome of the games. But it is a frustration of mine that when you look at who deserved what, and then to go back and retroactively say, well, look at how they performed in the bowl game. Well, you can't just take a look. I remember, I think it was 2005. 2005 Oregon football. One loss. They were 10-1 on the season. Their only loss that year was to USC, who was in the national title game. But because of a Notre Dame loophole, Oregon was kept out of the BCS and ended up in the Holiday Bowl. A bummer, to say the least. Also, they had their starting quarterback in Kellen Clemens out with a broken leg. Another bummer. And they lost to Oklahoma that day in San Diego. So it was like, well, see what happened? They lost, should have never been in there. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Yes, Florida State got beat by 60. They got beat by 60 to a Georgia team. Does that change anything about whether or not they should have been in the semifinal? No, it doesn't. The whole point of having a semifinal is to get the two best teams to play each other in the championship game. The semifinal is a means to an end, because we had, for years and years and years, number one versus number two, and number three had a debate. So the whole point of having 4-team playoff was not to have exciting semifinal games. That's not why the whole system was created. Now, we got away from ourselves. Shocker, because that's what we do in college football. You start with something that's a pretty decent idea, and then money, dumb people. There's too many dumb people in charge. Too many cooks in the kitchen. No leadership, not one voice, but about 50 different voices. From a committee to conference commissioners to university presidents. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Whole reason we got to the 4-team playoff was to set up number one versus number two. It's the whole reason it was there. It was not to create compelling semifinal matchups. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed to eliminate an undefeated team being kept out. That's why it was designed, and it failed in its mission. Now, it did not fail in terms of entertainment value. And I realize that I am trying to fight against the air here, and it's tough to argue that Florida State should be there when they lost by 60 and both semifinal games came down to the final play. I get it, but I'm also kind of a crazy person. All that being said, how awesome was yesterday? I can live in both worlds. I can justify it to myself. I can live in both. I can live in one world where I believe Florida State absolutely should have been a participant, and who knows what would have happened if all of their players would have participated and if they were motivated. See, that's the thing. Well, Georgia had opt-outs too. Like, yeah. Georgia lost in the SEC title game. They knew when they lost that game, they weren't getting in. They knew. Florida State went all the way up into having a watch party as an undefeated ACC champion. Sitting there with ESPN cameras rolling, being told, yeah, you're not going to get to go. And then your head coach is out there fighting the good fight. And then on top of that, and you cannot tell me this isn't a distraction, on top of that, so opt-outs, the bummer of not making it, taking your ball and going home, and then nothing but legal battles about, is Florida State leaving the ACC? And you might be saying, Justin, what do the kids care about that? Why do the players care? Ask Oregon State and Washington State. Ask them how that worked out. Now, that all being said, those two games were awesome. It's one of the things one of the many, many, many things I love about football. Coaches will tell you the process is more important than the outcome. It is the way you go about doing things than whether or not you are winning and losing. That's what great coaches always say, right? And the process of building a championship team, it is never ending. So think about this. We sat on our couches, maybe a little bit of a headache, a little bit of a champagne hangover, maybe some of us getting our last fun meal in before, hey, new year, new me, right? Getting our last little day of sitting on the couch before we're going to hit the treadmill tomorrow. Good luck, by the way, to all the people hitting the treadmill today. I'm rooting for you. I'm pulling for you. But we all sat there on the couch and we watched two tremendous games. Think about everything that came into play. If you were a player for Alabama, Michigan, Washington, or Texas, you started in the offseason. Spring football. Just practicing in the spring, which, by the way, is a handful of weeks away. Spring football, handful of weeks away. So you go to spring football. And then you go into off-season conditioning, sitting there in a weight room. There's no fans. There's no TV cameras. There's not even your head coach, just a psychotic strength and conditioning coach screaming at you to power clean more than you could clean yesterday. And you go through off-season conditioning. And then you go into training camp. And you start installing the offense. And then you start preparing for week one. Then you go from week to week to week, dealing with injuries, dealing with fatigue, dealing with disappointment, dealing with close losses, all the way up until the national championship semifinal game. And it comes down to one play. One play. Think about all of the days, weeks, months of preparation, hours upon hours upon hours of work to just put yourself in a situation where it is one play. Yeah, football is the best. It really is. It was nuts yesterday. And we can sit there and we can nitpick, like, what was Saban doing on that final call? Did he get outcoached by Harbaugh? Boy, Washington nearly had the choke of all chokes, and then Michael Penix is as unbelievable as it gets. But, man, something that will always fascinate me about the game of football is you could do hours, days, weeks, months of preparation for any potential scenario, right? That's why these coaches are all insane. That's why none of them will let you into their practice. That's why they will not give out injury information, anything to get an extra it, because that's what it comes down to. Texas and Washington. Ball goes up. Washington player makes a play. He's a second short or an inch away. Texas is going to the national title. It's an inch. It's a second. It's a step. If you watch the replay, Jalen Milroe gets the snap. By the way, if that snap is snapped at his hands instead of at his knees, is Alabama going to the national title game? If Jalen Milroe cuts left instead of cuts right, you wonder why these coaches are all insane. You wonder why they're all nuts. That's the difference. One step, 1 inch, half a second. Came right down to it. What an unbelievable day of football. But there's also an unbelievable weekend of football in the NFL. So we're going to dive into the NFL. We do have we got NFC and AFC number one seeds. Those are set. Murky playoff scene. Coaching rumors. So we'll dive into the weekend that was in the NFL. That's next, 620 Rip City Radio. Hey, happy 2024, everybody. We did it. We made it. Got through the holidays, got through the new year. Now, eyes looking forward to all the excitement of what will become of 2024. But obviously, a lot of football to dive into. We've talked a ton of college football. Why? Because it was a significant college football weekend. Obviously, we have two teams now head to the national title game, one of which is a Pac-12 team, which we'll talk about that more in just a minute. And Oregon State wrapped up their season, and boy, both teams heading in very different directions. Plus opt-outs, the future of bowl games, the last year of a 4-team playoff. Now looking ahead to next year to the 12-team playoff. So a lot of a lot of stuff to talk about with regard to college football. But it was also an NFL weekend, and it was not without some drama, as the Cowboys were absolutely gifted a victory over the Lions. And again, I understand there are like in the NBA, there are like very complex judgment calls in the NBA, and thankfully, us here in Portland, we get Lamar Hurd, one of the smartest dudes on TV. Because there are times you'll be watching a Blazer game, he's like, "Yep, nope, he's right there. That's a restricted area. He's below that hash right there. If he's below the hash, he's in the gather." And it's like there are a lot of intricacies in the NBA in terms of judgment calls, but for the most part, unless you are the Lakers, a 3 is a 3, a 2 is a 2. We kind of know what traveling is, but not really. And then in baseball, there's the infield fly rule, which not a lot of people know what it is. And there's also what is a balk, what is not a balk, what's a double switch. There's some pretty but nothing like in football, where you get some doozies. And every once in a while, a play will come up. Every once in a while, a scenario will come up, and you're like, "What? I didn't realize that was the whole thing." And we had that with the Lions and the Cowboys. Now, for the most part, I believe most football fans understand if you are going to run a tackle-eligible play, if you are going to have a lineman that is eligible to catch a pass, you got to report it. We've all been there at games, or we've all watched games, and then like 68 is reporting as eligible, and they do this weird thing where they brush the front of their referee shirts. Like 72 is reporting as eligible, and a lot of teams will put that in there as a decoy. They're like, "Yep, that keeps a certain defender because you can't just focus on the run." And then you get the gamesmanship like the Lions did, which was such a well-designed, it was such a well-designed trick play. And I've talked about this on the show multiple times, and I'm not a Lions fan. I have no dog in the fight with regard to the Lions. But 2 years ago when Dan Campbell got hired and everybody thought it was a joke because you had this guy who was, blasting Metallica everywhere, doing up-downs with his team during training camp. We all watched Hard Knocks. Looks like a psychopath. And it's like, this guy can't lead a professional team. This is an era of analytics and math. How is this meathead who's got a big old dip in, who is talking about biting kneecaps, how's he ever going to win in today's NFL? This is about film study and analytics and advanced stats. So many equations. This meathead can't. Yeah, it turns out, he can win. And the Lions were on their way to potentially getting their 12th win of the season. They hit a touchdown. They're down 1. Dan Campbell, to his style, he's like, we are going for it. We're going for it. We're going to put one play right, and they had the play. Boy, did they have the play. And it was such a well-designed play that it actually fooled the officials. Because if you look at the video review, multiple times throughout the game, they had brought in one particular offensive lineman he reported as eligible. They didn't throw it to him. Multiple times throughout the game, this particular lineman comes running on. He reports as eligible. They don't throw it to him. Setting up potentially this 2-point play. Different lineman goes in. He reports as eligible. White hat mistakenly reports the other lineman is eligible, even though when you look at the film, he's covered up. He can't be reported as eligible. They get an illegal touching call. You can't review it. They go back. They decide not to kick the extra point and go to overtime. They decide we're going for 2. Lions get gifted a game. What a mess. What a mess in the NFL. And normally I don't like to pile on officials. NFL officials are so good. Because you only think about the times when NFL officials screw up. By the way, in this thing, they screwed up big time. But you think about all the times you watch games and you watch a receiver in real time tiptoe the sideline and you go like, nope, he's out of bounds. And the official gives it the catch signal. You're like, no way. And then they slow it down to like, super duper slow-mo. And you're like, how did he even see that? It's because these officials are unbelievably good. Just every once in a while, in a situation like that, they drop the ball. Big time. And of course, because we are gambling obsessed, because we are social media obsessed, everybody's got to freak out. Credit to Dan Campbell and the way he responded. Credit to they were mad. At the end of the game, I completely understand. Yeah, throw the officials under the bus. Absolutely. Afterward, moving on, moving forward. Because it's something that that replay has done to our brains is that fans can't comprehend getting jobbed anymore. It happened for a long, long time. Not saying it's right. Not saying it's right at all. But for a long, long time, part of the entertainment of sports, even though nobody wants to talk about it, part of the entertainment of sports is, bad call happens. How do you respond? Both short-term and long-term. Bad call happens in the second quarter. How do you respond? Do you pout? Do you freak out? Do you let it persist? Do you let it pile on? Or are you mentally tough, can move on, and overcome? And we're going to find out how the Lions ultimately overcome this massively bad call. But it's the replay culture that we live in. I'm not saying the replay is bad. I'm saying replay culture has gotten a little bit out of hand. At some point, you have to just keep playing. Bad calls are going to happen. It's not malicious. Just sometimes officials are going to screw up. But the replay culture that we've created is like, well, we can't allow that. Bring in the robots. I don't know if you've ever watched a sci-fi movie, but anytime you bring in the robots, just realize we're all done at that point in time. So that was the Lions game. But other games of interest, the Philadelphia Eagles are a mess right now. Absolute mess right now. They are 11-5. They have lost 4 of their last 5 games. Only win is a win at home against the Giants last week, and they lose to a Cardinal team that isn't actively tanking, but would not have been upset if they would have lost that game. Would not have been upset if they lost that game. So the Eagles kind of dealing with a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. Chiefs get a big-time win over the Bengals. They got 10 wins on the season. Finally, again, the Chiefs win when Taylor is in the house. Ravens beat the Dolphins. Not only beat the Dolphins, beat the tar out of the Dolphins. And I'll tell you what. I've said kind of the theme of this year in the NFL is I've been talking about head coaches a ton. Mentioned it with Sean Payton. Now, to Sean Payton's credit, they switched out Russell Wilson. They got a win. Now, that win was against the Chargers, who have waved the white flag on the season. Herbert's been shut down. Their coach and GM has been fired. the Chargers have waved the white flag on the season. I'm pretty sure if Russell Wilson would have played that game for the Broncos, they would have won that game as well. But I said it last week. I was like, the relics, the old school, the iron fist coach of Sean Payton, those guys are a thing of the past. Because you look at the coaches who are winning and the coaches who are succeeding in the NFL, they are not my way or the highway guys. They're guys that have figured out how to win with the personnel that they have. And that has been, I think, the biggest storyline of the entire season. When you look at, I mentioned Dan Campbell, even though I know that the Dolphins got it put on them, but you look at Mike McDaniel, you look at even Kyle Shanahan, the different styles of coaches that are working. You look, I mean, they're not out of it yet, and they had a bad weekend, but an old guy in Pete Carroll, young guy in Mike McDaniel, everything in between, all sorts of different ways to win in the NFL. But to me, the other storyline beyond quarterback injuries, let's take a look at the two quarterbacks who right now are probably number one and number two in the MVP race. And I think Lamar Jackson may ultimately win the MVP. Boy, how soon we forget what last summer was like. Remember all the hot takes last summer with regard to Lamar Jackson? You can't pay Lamar Jackson up at the top 5 in the NFL. You can't give that guy all this guaranteed money. Hasn't proven it yet. And I remember in the summer I said, look back at Lamar Jackson's career. Oh, his mom is his agent. Too much money going out. Too risky. And there was a time when a handful of teams in the NFL could have made a deal and probably gotten Lamar Jackson away from the Baltimore Ravens. But instead, Ravens come in, they negotiate a deal. He bets on himself. 56-19, Ravens are 13-3. They've wrapped up the number 1 seed, and Lamar Jackson's probably going to win MVP. Where are the receipts on that one? So you got Lamar Jackson with the Ravens, and then you look at the other number 1 seed, and it's the subject that will not go away. Is Brock Purdy elite? Here we go. Here we go again with the is Brock Purdy elite discussion. Never mind that the 49ers are 12-4. Never mind that the 49ers, since that 3-game losing streak where he didn't have Deebo Samuel and didn't have Trent Williams, and a 3-game losing streak where if they have a field goal kicker that makes a, I think, fairly makeable kick against the Browns, it's only a 2-game losing streak. Since that point in time, 49ers have won 7 of 8. Their only loss is to the Ravens. Ravens are pretty good, by the way. They've won 7 of their last 8, including wins at Seattle, at Philadelphia, another win against the Seahawks. They just beat the Commanders on the road, and the Commanders kind of stink, but they put it on them 27-10. And it's at some point, we got to just start saying, hey, Brock Purdy is the guy. I've talked about this a ton. I'm not a 49er fan. Not one at all. And I have no dog in the fight with Brock Purdy. The only time I have remembered Brock Purdy was when he put it on the Oregon Ducks in the Fiesta Bowl in the weirdest game ever, the COVID Fiesta Bowl, where Oregon had like 3 wins on the season, but somehow because of a COVID outbreak got into the Pac-12 championship game and beat USC, only to get it put on them by Iowa State. But we talk about the replay obsession that we have in the NFL with regard to player evaluation. The draft obsession we have, gang, and How many times do we have to see evidence over and over and over again about how certain players just get overlooked? They do. They just get overlooked. Talent evaluators in the NFL, from GMs to head coaches, all the way down to the lowest scout on the team. Talent evaluators miss all the time. Every single year. They missed on Brock Purdy. I would be willing to bet if you gave every NFL GM who is maybe looking for a quarterback right now truth serum and say, hey, boy, if you could go back 2 years ago when 7 different times you passed up Brock Purdy and now you need would you think about maybe taking him 6th round, 5th round? Oh, but Justin, look at all his weapons. Yeah, it's the NFL. Everybody's got weapons. Everybody's got weapons. Name me one quarterback who is winning at the level that Brock Purdy is winning at without weapons. Joe Burrow is unbelievable when healthy. Yeah, he's got Jamar Chase. Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce. And had Tyreek Hill for a time. Speaking of that, Tua gets Tyreek Hill. Everybody's got weapons. He's just making $800,000, and his weapons are able to get paid. But forget if he was drafted in the 1st round. What if Brock Purdy was drafted in the 3rd round? The 3rd round pick. What would we think of him then? Because I remember back in 2012, 3rd round quarterback came into Seattle. Pete Carroll came in and was like, yeah, well, I know we just signed Matt Flynn, but this 3rd rounder, that Wilson kid, we're going to play him. The only reason there is Brock Purdy slander, the only reason it exists, is simply because he was drafted dead last overall. I would be willing to bet if he was a 7th rounder but was not Mr. Irrelevant, wasn't dead last overall, we would probably still be looking at him very differently. But, ho-hum, just got the 49ers back in the 1 seed again. Now we'll see what happens in the postseason. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. But last time I checked, they don't change the rules when playoff football comes around. Yeah, the stakes are higher, and legacies and legends are made in the postseason. But they don't change the rules of the game, right? They're still going to. The 49ers are still going to be able to play McCaffrey and Debo and all those guys in the playoffs. All right, got it. If Lamar Jackson's not the MVP, which I think he should be, Brock Purdy's the guy. How many teams in the NFL right now, if they were being open and honest with themselves, would take that dude instantly, right now? But because he was drafted dead last overall, and because we can't just possibly fathom that maybe all of these guys who we anoint as football genius, they missed that one. Sorry, they just missed it. Happens all the time. In every phase of sports, entertainment, or evaluation, dudes get missed all the time. Players get missed. Shows get missed. Talent gets missed all the time. Crying out loud, Jennifer Hudson was picked 7th on American Idol. She won an Academy Award. If Brock Purdy was a 3rd rounder, not even a first, if he was a 3rd rounder, we would be celebrating how smart Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are for their talent evaluation. But because he was dead, well, he's just a game manager. Yeah, he is. He's managing the game. Winning them, by the way. All right. Coming up next, it is a Tuesday. It is that time of year where the holiday cheer is behind us. The winter weather is still here, and I think there's a lot of people grumpy today. So we will lean into it. We'll get off my lawn. That's next, 620 Rip City Radio. right, time to wrap up hour number 2. Michael Shacker producing the program from his lair. What was that? What did we just intro the segment with?
This is some happy Faith No More music.
Faith No More had more than one song?
They had many albums.
Many albums? I thought they just had the one song.
They had multiple lead singers.
What is it? What was that song? You Want It All, but You Can't Have It? That's the only one I remember. That fish was flopping around.
Yeah,
in the
and then he
video?
pretended to be a fish when he performed it live.
Yeah. All right. Didn't realize Faith No More had more than one song. Way to go. Way to go, Faith No More. How about it? All right. So we talk about this all the time, about how Tuesday is the grumpiest day of the week. It's statistical, right? It's scientifically proven. I'm not a scientist. I trust the science. You know, that's what they always tell you. You trust the science, and they will tell you the human brain. Well, it can hunker down for the Monday, right? You get the Sunday scaries, and then you just got to hunker down for Monday, and then Wednesday. Well, you're halfway there. They call it the hump day, right? Thursday, Friday, you're rolling into the weekend, but it's that Tuesday. It's that Tuesday that gets you. And maybe, you're just still far enough away for the weekend. You've used up all of your resolve on a Monday. And then also, I got to wonder if maybe January 2nd. Is January 2nd, when it's a Tuesday, is today maybe statistically the grumpiest day of the year? Because while it is still dark and cold outside, there is no longer a holiday season to distract us. And all that is ahead now is, just more cold. And sure, we got a Super Bowl coming up and a national championship game coming up. And you know what? It won't be all that long before March Madness will be here. Then the NBA playoffs, the Masters, and everything else. But it seems like it is far, far away. So rather than, stuffing all that anger down, ultimately to have it maybe be lashed out in an unhealthy way, we want to get it all out. So it's a little segment we like to call Get Off My Lawn. Here we go.
On RCM. It's time for Justin to get grumpy. Get off my lawn on RCM.
All right, first, packaging. Get off my lawn. That's right. Christmas has came and went. And if you were like me, your garage, after the very thoughtful, nice gifts that were given to me by friends and family and the gifts that I have given to my friends and family, and after the initial unwrapping, right, then guess what comes? Nothing but packaging. Oh, my goodness gracious. We have gone overboard with the packaging. Whether it is the clamshell packaging, whether it is the 7 different layers of plastic packaging, the packaging for stuff is just... When I was growing up, you would get a cardboard thing, and it had a He-Man in there, and you would rip it open, and boom, you were playing with He-Man. The amount of packaging, whether it, like I said, that clamshell thing, whoever created the clamshell packaging, and you know what I'm talking about. The packaging that you need a blowtorch and maybe a grinding wheel to maybe get in there. Whether it's the clamshell packaging, whether it is I don't know how we can get this much cardboard in cardboard boxes. But between the plastic packaging, the massive amounts of cardboard, and then just nothing but plastic on plastic on plastic, packaging can just get off my lawn. All I have got right now in my garage is put away Christmas decorations because, yesterday, in between games, after the Fiesta Bowl, before the Rose Bowl, your boy got up on his ladder. And by the way, ladders can get off my lawn. Yeah, ladders. Hey, 17 different ladders in one. That's the one that I have. I believe it's called the Little Giant. It's a little giant pain in the rear, if you know what I'm talking about. It's like, 17 ladders in one. Great, I got 17 different options for ladders. Not one can I get up to the proper spot so I can take down my Christmas lights. But you know what? Because I'm a warrior, I got through it. So the Christmas lights are down. So my ladder can get off my lawn as well. But all that is in my my garage right now is nothing but cardboard, plastic, yard debris, because the tree, gone. Tree's out, hacked up, in the yard debris, and nothing but packaging, though, left and right. How's your garage looking, Shacker? Is your tree down? How long does your tree stand up at the Shacker household? Now that we are officially into 2024.
There's no tree at my house, but I did go over to my mom's house and took down her Christmas lights yesterday.
Did you had to go up on the ladder too?
Yeah, I had to go up on a ladder, and I laughed when he said, "Hey, ladders, get off my lawn," because I could still see the hole from when I put the lights up and the ladder dipped into the grass because it was really swampy.
Oh yeah. Do you got the 17 ladders in one like I got?
I got the giant ladder. Yeah, I know what it's like to set that up. If you want to do I only use the V set. I don't do the 17 setups. I just want to go climb like a normal ladder.
The A-frame is what you're talking about. You want the A-frame.
The A-frame. But it looks like a V, so that's why I called it a V.
Either way, happy to have the holidays behind us, though. Between just the mountains and mountains and mountains of cardboard and then plastic packaging, and then now my ladder that is, again, for whatever reason, just of all the settings that it needs to be, can't ever get it to the one it needs to be. So there you go. Hopefully you all get through your day. Like I mentioned, if you're maybe hitting the treadmill today, I salute you. I'm all for. And by the way, while we're all a little bit grumpy today, to the folks at the gym, let me just throw this out real quick. We're going to get back to football in hour number 3. But to the folks at the gym, because I am one of you, and gym culture has been a bit of a problem with this whole Instagram thing. But to the people at the gym, let's be a little bit nice to all the new people coming in today, all right? Yeah, it's going to be a bit annoying, and it's going to be a bit crowded, and are a lot of these people going to be gone by February? Yes, they are. But you know what? Some people are going to stick it out. Some people are going to stick with this New Year's resolution. They're going to get on that treadmill. They're going to get on that Stairmaster. They're going to do a couple of crunches. Maybe get some deadlifts in. Who knows? Let's just be a little bit patient, a little bit welcoming to the new people into the gym. It's hard enough starting off on a fitness journey when you maybe let yourself go a little bit. Don't need a bunch of judgmental jerks sitting there at the gym side-eyeing you, going like, when are all these newbies going to leave? All right, so we are wrapping up hour number 2. We got more football to talk about in hour number 3, but before we get to all that, I do want to tell you about the good folks at DeBella. That's right. It may be grumpy in terms of all sorts of packaging and ladders that don't work and Christmas lights that are struggling to come down, but you know what doesn't make you grumpy? Saving on your energy bill, because DeBella, the official home improvement partner of the Portland Timbers, can help you save up to 30% on your energy bill. They can take care of your roofing, your windows, your siding. All those renovations can save you big bucks on your energy bill. Plus, if your roof is leaking or just aging, if you were like me, you got up on the roof. Now, my roof, in a good spot. But if your roof is a little worse for wear, well, get a free quote from my friends at DeBella. They've got over 15,000 five-star reviews on Google for their excellent work. Plus, right now, they've got an amazing finance opportunity with 0 down, no payments until 2025. That's on approved credit. 0 down, no payments until 2025 on approved credit for roofing, siding, windows, or bath renovations. DeBella, DABELLA.us. Get for your free, no obligation appointment, and they can make updating your home super easy. DeBella, the official home improvement partner of the Portland Timbers.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
It is 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Justin Myers with you. The Portland Trail Blazers go down to the Phoenix Suns last night, 109-88. Blazers were led, though, by Scoot Henderson. Over the weekend, Oregon State takes the 40-8 loss to Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl, ending their season. Oregon ends on a winning note with a 45-6 beatdown of Liberty. Bo Nix ends as the single-season completion percentage record holder for the NCAA. We have got a national championship game set in less than a week as the Washington Huskies take down the Texas Longhorns to advance to the College Football National Championship, where they will face Michigan, who beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl. It is hour number 3 of RCM. First show 2024. Right now on 620 Rip City Radio.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's RCM with Justin Myers, right here on your home of the Portland Trailblazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
It is hour number 3 of RCM. Super producer Brendan is in health and safety protocols. Friend of the program, Devon Pouncey, who normally joins us each and every Tuesday. He's got a little flu bug as well. So we are just hanging out all day long. And it is a football day because I'm trying to think. Like the calendar, talk about blessing the football fan over the weekend. Between the Sun Bowl starting on Friday. Now I get it. The Sun Bowl was not a fun experience for Oregon State fans who were watching, or for maybe those that maybe traveled down to El Paso. But from the Sun Bowl on Friday afternoon, culminating with the Sugar Bowl last night. What a weekend. What a weekend in college football. Oregon beats down Liberty. They have now got 12 wins on the season. But because of the circumstances of the season, kind of feels a little bit meh. More on that coming up later on in the big show. The importance, the value of rivalries. And now Washington is headed to the national title game. And obviously, I think, have all kind of come to grips or made peace with the demise of the Pac-12 conference. We've talked about it a ton on this program. And it's been an awkward year. And now that there is one football game left, and there is still a Pac-12 team standing, a team that will be facing Michigan next year, but as a conference opponent, but it's been an awkward year. But I think we've all kind of come to the realization, we've all come to the understanding that the Pac-12 conference is kaput. It is no more. And I don't know where, I think it might have been at the Sugar Bowl, but because George Kliavkoff is still the acting commissioner of the Pac-12, and someone asked him about how it feels to see Washington in the national championship game now. He said it was kind of surreal. And he said it's unfortunate with what has happened with the conference and the fact that some schools didn't show patience. And I do wonder, when you see now clearly that Oregon and Washington, that were at the top of the conference, played 2 epic games, a regular season game and a Pac-12 championship game, both down to the wire, field goal games. And then Oregon blows out Liberty in a game that should have never even been played. But Liberty made it on to the Fiesta Bowl in some bowl game loophole, because we were also mean to Boise State for all those years. Right? For all those people, like all those Oregon fans, like, what is Oregon doing playing Liberty? I'll tell you why. It's because we were all mean to Boise State back in the mid-2000s. That's why. Because, Boise State would schedule tough and then win all their games, and then would go to bowl games and win those as well. It's like, yeah. Can't be part of our party. And then there was a lawsuit, and as part of a concession, the then BCS and then the New Year's Six created a little loophole that says, yeah, we'll let one of the little guys in. And sometimes it's fun, right? Tulane beat USC last year. Sometimes it's kind of interesting to see what happens when you put kind of David versus Goliath. Sometimes Goliath just squashes Liberty like Oregon did yesterday, because Liberty had no business being in that ballgame. But credit to Dan Lanning and credit to the Oregon staff, and maybe credit a little bit to some NIL. Oregon could have easily had 30 opt-outs of that game. Could have easily had 30 opt-outs of that game. But I think it started with Bo Nix. Part of it, I think, was a little bit of financial incentive. But I think also part of it was Bo Nix loves playing college football. And to get to play one more college game. And you do have to wonder if maybe Oregon was playing Georgia or playing Florida State or playing Ohio State, what does the opt-out situation look like? But the fact that you got an absolute cupcake in Liberty maybe made that decision a little bit easier. Who knows? But clearly, when you look at both Oregon and Washington this year, they were at the top of college football and deserved to be there. And it's unfortunate because in the years where the decisions were being made in terms of conference realignment, which this whole thing kind of went into play 2 years previous because of USC and UCLA. The fact that the Pac-12 was down of the Power Five, the Pac-12 was a clear fifth, and it was a distant fifth. But it took Washington hiring Kalen DeBoer. It took USC hiring Lincoln Riley. It took Oregon bridging the gap from Mario Cristobal to Dan Lanning. It took Bo Nix and Michael Penix and Caleb Williams and Cam Rising and Cam Ward and any other of these quarterbacks that transferred into the conference to finally, in its final year, set up the Pac-12 as one of the elite conferences in college football. And you saw that with Oregon in their performance yesterday, and you saw that clearly in Washington's performance against Texas. And it is really fun. And look, I'm an Oregon fan. I know I joke about it a lot because my wife is a Washington alum, and so I can't escape the Husky of it all. I can't. But it is really funny watching college football media members who clearly did not watch West Coast games, watch that game with Washington and Texas last night. Because anybody that watched any Pac-12 football this year and saw the way Michael Penix was throwing just fade routes to the sideline and seeing any one of his receivers just never drop the football, and they're all in amazement yesterday. If you looked at Twitter, if you looked at the X app or whatever you want to call it, and you look at the responses to legitimate college football personnel, not just casuals, not just Johnny-come-lately fans, but you look at the SEC media personalities who clearly do not watch West Coast football because it just means more down in the South, or the people that clearly only watch Texas and Oklahoma. And you see some of the reactions to the way Michael Penix was playing is like, yeah, ask anybody in the Pac-12. That's what he does. It's annoying. I was trying to figure out a sports comparison for Michael Penix. Because if you watch him, there's no way he should be able to get away with what he gets away with. And that is not a criticism, that is a compliment. The way that he throws the ball downfield, and it looks like, aesthetically, it looks like a 50-50 ball. When in reality, he knows exactly where the ball is going. He knows exactly where his receiver is going. He has a connection with his receiver core unlike anything in college football, including Bo Nix and Troy Franklin and Tez and everybody else at Oregon. It's unlike anything I've seen in a long time. I mean, obviously, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, all right. So it was like 4 years ago. But you wonder, why did Washington all season long, not pass the eye test. That's why. Because quarterbacks shouldn't be able to get away with what Michael Penix gets away with, which is, Rome Odunze is double covered with the sideline being a third defender, right? They always say, use the sideline as a defender. And I'm watching Washington, and we've seen it all season long, and Odunze is running down the sideline, and he's got a safety over the top, and the cornerback is going stride for stride, and boom. Penix drops it in a bucket. Odunze never drops the ball, and neither does Polk, neither does McMillan, or neither does any of those guys on the Washington team. It is very, very annoying. They never drop the ball, and 50-50 balls is what it looks like, but in reality, that's their offense. That's why Washington's never passed the eye test all season long. And also, I will say this. To the recency bias Husky fan, and I understand, look, hey, Husky fans, dance your dance, talk your you-know-what. It's your day. It's your day. We talk about it all the time on this program. Winners get sprinkles, and it matters. Do your celebration dance, talk your you-know-what, have a day. But let's not bring in this Heisman stuff with one very good game from Michael Penix and just completely forget about the Apple Cup that happened a couple weeks ago and just completely forget about the Arizona State game. Those games actually happened. There were games where Michael Penix did not play his best, where the offense sputtered and needed a pick six to beat Arizona State at home. Needed a miracle fourth down play to defeat Washington State at home. Those games happened as well. Sometimes Heisman races are clear cut. This year, the Heisman race was a razor-thin wire. From the success of Penix and Bo Nix, to the talent of Marvin Harrison, to the numbers of Jaden Daniels, who ultimately walked away with the trophy, this was one of those years where you couldn't have a down week. Against Washington State, Michael Penix had a down week. They pulled off the win, but he had a down week. And then the next week, Bo Nix, with the Heisman on the line, he had, excuse me, he had a down first half against Washington. And it ultimately cost Oregon the game, the Pac-12, shot at the college football playoff, and the Heisman Trophy, all in one. Because that's how razor thin it was this year. So let's just pump the brakes a little bit on the Washington fans with can't believe this guy didn't win the Heisman. It is a full season, gang. And you saw the Arizona State game and the Washington State game just like I did. Now, let's get back to the compliments, because Washington deserves their flowers today. And it's hard. It's hard to do, but you got to do it. I was trying to figure out a comparison. It reminds me, and this is going to be crazy, but just kind of go with me on this. The way Michael Penix plays, it reminds me of early Steph Curry. Because Steph Curry, when he first got into the league, right, he wasn't the all-time greatest three-point shooter like we know right now. He wasn't the unanimous MVP and multiple NBA champion like we know now. He was a guy that was coming in and shot the ball a lot. And everybody said, can't shoot like that in the NBA. You might be able to get away with that at Davidson. Can't shoot like that in the NBA. And, well, as we have learned, Steph Curry can shoot like that because he's just that talented. When you watch Michael Penix throw and you go he can't get away with that. There's too many 50-50 balls, too many balls up for grabs. There's no way he can get away with that. It's yeah, he can, because that's their offense. It looks like he's just chuck and duck. But you can't just chuck and duck for 14 weeks. Sorry, you can't do it. At some point, you have to be all right, they've got something figured out. And it's the connection that he has with his receivers. It's the connection that he has with his head coach and his offense. It looks like it's chuck and duck. Just throw it up for grabs. No. They've got something figured out. But that's why Washington, I think, has struggled to pass the eye test all season long, because if you weren't watching them and you watch, you're like, oh, boy, he gets away with a lot. It's like, those aren't gambles. They throw that ball 15 to 20 times a game all season long. You get these coaches that go for it and go for it. It's like, yeah, if you go for it all the time, guess what? It becomes commonplace. You're not nervous doing it. It's not luck at a certain point. And with Washington and with Penix, it's not luck. It's annoying, too, as an Oregon fan. Just like the receivers never drop the ball. Perfect coverage from the defense, doesn't matter. Drop it right in a bucket. They've got it. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens coming up with Michigan. We got a whole week to talk about it. I do want to go back and take a look at the Oregon football season. 12 wins for an Oregon football season. Yet, feels a little bit meh. Power of rivalry in college football. We'll talk about that next. 620 Rip City Radio. By the way, Shacker, you don't even know how appropriate this intro music is to this segment we're about to do right now. You don't even know the home run that you hit right out of the park, out of the stadium.
Just like the guitar riff.
Exactly right. So this is Florida-Georgia line, a group that famously became rivals and broke up. A lot of people believe that it was bickering about politics on social media, but also obviously one of the members from Florida, the other from Georgia. Florida, Georgia, famous college football rivals. And we're going to talk about the power of rivalry right now on the big show because I think it's appropriate to talk about today. Phoenix, Arizona yesterday, Glendale, Arizona to be exact. The Oregon Ducks wrapped up a 12-win season. Doesn't happen very often. Now, obviously, with Pac-12 championship games and with bowl games and with the extended 12, it's a little bit different than it was 15 years ago in like the Bilotti era, but still, the fact that Oregon wrapped up a 12-win season is something special. 12-2, won the Fiesta Bowl, and Bo Nix walks away as a two-year starter for the Oregon Ducks with numbers that are likely untouchable. Now, we'll see what happens with Dylan Gabriel next year, but you look at what Bo Nix was able to do these last couple of years, touchdown-to-interception ratio, and he is now the all-time single-season completion percentage leader in NCAA football history. And was some of that a little bit manipulated? Sure. But who cares? It's football. If that record holds for 10 years, nobody's going to be like, hey, remember they were playing Liberty and they were running push passes to up the completion percentage? Yeah, but still ran through the Pac-12, throwing at about 78% all season long. And as he should have, Bo Nix got his curtain call for the Oregon Ducks. What's the legacy going to be? That's why I bring up the power of rivalry, right? When you look at the numbers, when you look at the wins, when you look at completion percentage and touchdowns, excitement level, all that, Bo Nix is one of the all-time great Oregon football players. He is up there with any Oregon football player, any era, all time. I'm a lifelong Oregon fan, and I will argue with any of you. But there is one thing that will hang over Bo Nix's Oregon legacy, and it's not the fact that he was a transfer. It's not the fact that he was a legacy to Auburn. It's actually kind of a unique, cool story that he started his career playing against Oregon, and he finished his career playing for Oregon. The reason why Bo Nix's legacy is going to be somewhat complicated is because of the power of rivalry. And it's also kind of where we sit right now with Dan Lanning as a head coach. Dan Lanning, in terms of recruiting, nobody has been better. Nobody in Oregon football history has been better at recruiting. Dan Lanning, in his first 2 years as the Oregon head coach, is 22-5. You want a comparison, by the way? Chip Kelly was 22-4. Remember, they didn't have a Pac-12 championship game for the first 2 years of Chip Kelly's tenure. So Chip Kelly, 22-4 in his first 2 years as Oregon's head coach. Dan Lanning's 22-5. But Oregon just came off of a 12-win season where they won the Fiesta Bowl. Who cares if it was against Liberty? You won the Fiesta Bowl. It was 12 wins. And I think a lot of Oregon fans are sitting there going like, nah, it just doesn't quite feel right. It's the power of rivalry. Because if, let's just say, USC was playing for a national championship game in a week and not Washington, how would Oregon fans be feeling about this season? You go back a couple of years ago, and Oregon got a win at the Horseshoe. They beat Ohio State, got absolutely jobbed against Stanford. But kind of fell apart at the end of the season, losing to Utah twice. And that one kind of stunk. Mario Cristobal would ultimately leave. But the fact that it was Utah and not Washington changes things a bit. I always talk about, in my opinion, and obviously it's up for debate, it's up for argument, and I would love to have it. But in my opinion, the greatest Oregon football team of all time is the 2012 Oregon football team. A team that did not win a championship. Team that did, like this team, lost in conference, didn't win the Pac-12, won the Fiesta Bowl. They beat Kansas State. For my money, the 2012 Oregon team is the best one of all time. But they lost to Stanford, as opposed to, say, losing to Washington. Right? You look at the numbers with Dan Lanning and with Chip Kelly. Dan Lanning is 22-5 in his first 2 years. Chip Kelly is 22-4. Yet no Oregon fan would ever dare to say that Dan Lanning is on the same plane as Chip Kelly. For a couple of reasons. One, we know kind of how the Chip Kelly run ended. It was a 4-year run at the top of college football that culminated in multiple conference championships and a Rose Bowl win and a Fiesta Bowl win. Dan Lanning, we're in the unknown. What's going to happen in the Big Ten? What's going to happen with Dylan Gabriel? What's going to happen with the transfer portal? We don't know. Feels pretty good, but you don't know. Here's the other thing, which brings us right back to where we started the segment. When you look back at the Chip Kelly era, you know what you never had to worry about? Oregon State or Washington beating you. Never had to worry about it. Now, moving forward in the Dan Lanning era, probably don't have to worry about Oregon State beating you for a while. It's going to be a tough road, Beavs. Sorry about it, but it just is. Going to be playing the Beavs in September. Trent Bray has got a lot of work on his hands. But Oregon is coming off of a 12-win season where they lost to Washington not once but twice and 3 times in a row the last 2 years. So how do you get to a 12-win season and kind of meh about it? It was, like I said, it was fun watching the Fiesta Bowl. It was fun beating the tar out of Liberty. Because Liberty for a minute actually thought they had a chance and they were talking trash, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, yep, it's over. Have a fun trip back to Virginia, guys. This one's done. And it was fun at some point in that third quarter watching Oregon just kind of toy with a far inferior opponent. Blowouts are fun. But then something happened. Something happened with the Oregon party, which you realized, yeah, that was the JV game. Later on that night, your arch nemesis took the field and got one of the biggest wins in their program's history. The storied program in Washington, but last night, winning a college football semifinal the way that they did against Texas on that big stage, that's as big of a win for Washington as they've had since they won the Rose Bowl in 1991. And if you're an Oregon fan, you're just like, boy, that Fiesta Bowl win just doesn't quite sit right. Welcome to rivalry, boys and girls. Ultimately, heading into the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington being at the level that they are at, good for both programs. Rivalry, intensity, pushing others to greatness, it's good for both programs. But when you saw Bo Nix take that curtain call, man, it was great. You saw his dad in the stands crying, and you saw him run over, hugging his teammates, and he got the walk-off that he deserved. And it was like, man, what a run. What a 2-year run for Bo Nix. But you couldn't help once that Washington game kicked off, and you saw Michael Penix throwing dimes left and right, think like, oh, yeah, there's that. Complicated legacy. It is. It's going to be interesting in the next couple of years because There are all-time beloved greats in Oregon football history. They are one-name people. You know what I'm talking about. One names. Joey. Marcus. Herbie. Is Bo going to be one of those one-name guys? You could also throw Sabrina in there and Pre. You want to talk about, like, Oregon legends, they have one name. They're one-name players. Coaches, Chip. Is Bo going to be one of those one-name players? Well, we're going to find out in a couple of years. It's interesting that his name is Bo. Now, this is going to be a very weird comparison, but I think I need you to go with me on this. As a child who was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, I will die on the hill that Bo Jackson is the greatest athlete of all time. I'll die on that hill. Now, some people may want to say, well, Justin, you weren't alive. There was a guy named Jesse Owens. There was a guy named Jackie Robinson. I think Jackie Robinson lettered in 4 sports at UCLA. I get all that. For my money, greatest athlete ever was Bo Jackson. And other than a Heisman Trophy, Bo Jackson doesn't have any records. He doesn't have any championships. He doesn't have any rings. All he has is legend. Right? He's got the Heisman, but after that, all he has is legend. And 40-something-year-old dudes like me telling kids, yeah, you don't understand, you weren't there. Because it was a career that was cut short by injury, that didn't have any MVPs, didn't have any championships, never had that championship moment. Bo Jackson had plenty of highlights, but never had that championship moment other than when he was playing at Auburn. Bo over the top against Alabama. When you think about his time at the Raiders, there's a lot of highlights. Of course, him running over the Boz on Monday Night Football. Northwest fans will remember that forever. But you never had that montage of him winning a championship, winning a Super Bowl, winning a World Series. Just random highlights here and there from Monday Night Football, from the Baseball All-Star Game. And the legend is just stories that middle-aged dudes like me continue to tell. Like that and Tecmo Bowl. And while I'm not comparing Bo Jackson or Bo Nix to Bo Jackson, there is going to be a little bit of a comparison or a little bit of familiarity because in about 5, 6, 7 years, Oregon football will be entrenched in the Big Ten or whatever college football is at that point in time, right? What is college football going to be in about 5 or 10 years? Who knows? But the way it looks right now is that Oregon's going to be entrenched in the Big Ten, and maybe they've got a Big Ten title, maybe they don't. Maybe they've got a couple of 12-team college football playoff appearances. Maybe they got a couple of wins. Maybe they make a Final Four. Who knows? But at some point, some kid who's now in elementary school is going to be in high school, and it's going to be like, hey, what was that 2 years with Bo Nix like? And all of us who were there are going to be like, oh, boy, it was something special. Let me tell you. I mean, one of the all-time greats. It's like, all-time greats. Didn't he lose to Washington 3 times and lose to Oregon State? Like 50-50 against Oregon State. No conference titles. No real championship moment. Yeah, but you don't understand. You weren't there. You go back and you look at great Oregon football players. They all have a championship moment. You go back to Justin Herbert. Pac-12 championship game against Utah. Then Rose Bowl win against Wisconsin. Championship moment. Before that, you had Marcus Mariota. Clearly, dude won a Heisman. Multiple championship moments, including beating Florida State in the Rose Bowl and winning the Heisman. You had LaMichael James. That run up the middle against Stanford that secured what would ultimately become a conference championship. And then before that, you go all the way back to 2001, and you got Joey Harrington in the Fiesta Bowl against Colorado. Those are the one-name guys. When you talk to Oregon fans, it's Joey, it's LaMichael, it's Herbie, it's Marcus. All of those guys have one thing in common. They all got a championship. They got a championship. They got a bowl win. They got hardware in the record books. When it was all said and done, they were on top of the mountain, at least in the Pac-10, Pac-12. It was fun watching Bo Nix take that curtain call yesterday at, I think it's State Farm Field? Or can't remember. University of Phoenix Stadium? I don't remember. And his 2 years are something special. And by the way, his 2 years at Oregon were necessary. Because Oregon football's transition to the Big Ten is nowhere the same without Bo Nix. And, again, the great unknown, if Bo Nix doesn't come to Oregon, and Oregon doesn't stay on top of the conference and doesn't stay nationally relevant after Mario Cristobal left and Dan Lanning came in, a guy with no head coaching experience, if Bo Nix doesn't make that transfer, and the Ducks had to go with inexperience in Ty Thompson, and maybe Ty would have been fine, but clearly he wasn't at Bo Nix's level. Is Oregon even headed to the Big Ten? Probably, but it's still up for debate. It's still a question. So it was a fascinating career. I love the guy. I love the fact that Bo Nix will always kind of have that connection to Oregon, to our state. But it's going to be an interesting legacy because he leaves without a championship. Fiesta Bowl championship is one thing, but in an era of opt-outs and a win against Liberty, not quite the same as Joey Harrington beating Colorado in the Fiesta Bowl 20-some years ago. All right, we have got the RCM mailbag to wrap up the big show here on a Tuesday, 620, Rip City Radio.
I'm ready for mailbag. Probably would have had a 3-second delay if I did mailbag from El Paso. I've asked him by text. He won't reply. He'll answer all my other questions, but he won't reply to that question. I'm guessing really high at this point, but he won't admit it.
All right, time to wrap up the big show. We do that the same way each and every day with the RCM mailbag. Random questions, any subject, any topic, nothing is off limits. And I repeat, will not duck the tough questions. Michael Shacker is producing from his lair, luckily not producing from the West Texas town of El Paso, which he was on Friday. He has made it back safely to his, there we go. Oh, boy. You got a ringing in your ear like I got? No? All right. So, as I set to recover from that shockwave that just got put through my brain, it is time for the RCM mailbag.
Well, first up in the mailbag, sorry about the earring there. Just had a mouse swipe go vicious on me.
Give it a little hot, give it a little hot, Shacker.
But I got to know, do you think the Portland Trailblazers will have new owners in 2024?
That is, no, they won't. And it's unfortunate because this has turned into a big waited out kind of deal. So, yeah. As much as I would love to see in the calendar year, right, my sports wish, amongst many, many other things, would be for the Portland Trailblazers to be sold to Phil Knight and company and let Phil Knight do his swoosh thing to not only the organization, but to the Moda Center and the surrounding areas. And again, I've talked about it over and over and over again. Call me a homer if you will. Go down to Autzen Stadium, go down to Hayward Field, go down to Matthew Knight Arena, and take a look at the surrounding areas when Phil Knight gets his hands on a project. If you don't think that Moda Center and the Rose Quarter area and that part of the city which desperately needs to be revived and upgraded, if you don't think that swoosh and the Phil Knight blueprint can't happen, you're crazy. Here's the sad thing, though. I don't think the Blazers and this particular ownership is in any hurry to sell. Well, since sadly we lost Paul Allen, I think the count is now 4 NBA teams have sold. 4. The market is set. It's probably going to cost about $3.5 billion, and there's nothing I love more than spending billionaires' money. But when you look at the way that this whole thing kind of went down, I think Blazer ownership is dead set on, if they eventually do sell the franchise, on selling it to anybody but Phil Knight, which is sad. And it's not going to happen in 2024. I'd love to put positivity out into the universe, but no, I don't think it's going to happen. What do we got? What's next?
Well, is the Moda Center, is that now considered an old arena?
Yeah, it kind of is. As weird as it sounds. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, especially on the West Coast. I think maybe the one in Phoenix. I don't know what it's called. I think that's it was like the Gila River Resorts. It used, but like I think that one might be a little bit older. But yeah, I mean, when was Moda Center? 95? I think it was.
Correct.
I think it was 95. So yeah, 30 years. I think it's kind of an old arena, but like, you could upgrade it. You can revive it. It doesn't. I don't know about you. I've been to a handful of arenas. I've been down to Staples Center. Crypto.com. I've been there. Haven't been to the new Climate Pledge, but that would be actually the cool thing, right? Is if you could do to Moda Center what they did in Seattle to now Climate Pledge Arena, but formerly Key Arena, which is essentially take the existing structure and just revamp it from the inside out. And again, I'm doing what I love to do the most, which is spending billionaires' money and not spending my own money. But yeah, I don't get the sense that like Moda Center, it doesn't feel old. Maybe it's just because I love that place. And it just always kind of has that familiar feeling. But I guess when you think about, like, the Warriors have got a new arena, The Clippers are going to get a new arena. Clearly, Staples Center into crypto is a new arena. But the Bucks just got a new arena. I mean, they're popping up all over the place. All right.
The Kings got a new arena.
That's right. The Kings, they light the beam, for crying out loud. They throw the beam up when they win. Yeah, so the Kings got a new arena. Yeah, new arenas just popping up all over the place. All right, what's next?
All right, non-sports question. Do you wash your car in the winter?
No, not at all. Honest, like, I barely wash my car in the summer, Shacker. I'll be perfectly honest.
You ever go through the car wash or just do it yourself?
So, like, here's the thing. When you go for as long as I have without washing the outside of my truck. Now, recently, had family in town and needed to use my truck, so I had to actually, like, clean it out on the inside. Had to get in there and vacuum it and clean it out on the inside. My truck's not dirty, per se, but it's a truck, you know, and I'm the only one that drives it. Like, we have my wife's car, and then when we go on trips, we would take my wife's. So I'm the only one that ever drives my truck. So it is suited to the cleanliness for me, which is, it's not full of garbage, but, you know, it's a truck that I used, you know, when I'm working in the dirt and doing landscaping. So there's some dirt in there. There's some gravel in there. But had family come into town for Christmas, had to clean it out. So the inside actually is looking pretty good. But, yeah, you know how, like, you go, like, all winter and you don't wash your car, and then then you take it to, like, the car wash, not like the nice one, not like the wash man one where they, like, get in there and really scrub it, but, like, you go through, like, one of the cheapo ones, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to name them off, but you know what I mean, with one of the cheapo ones, and all of a sudden you get out and you're like, oh, yeah, that just left, like, swirl marks, because there's way too much dirt on this. Do you wash your car in the winter?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
But I always regret it when it rains the next day. What's the point?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've taken my truck through a car wash maybe ever. This is my first one that I have. Like, normally I'm with you like 2 or 3 times in the summer, and especially now that I have my own home, I'm not living in an apartment anymore. Like, I'll get out there. I'm not afraid to scrub it, but for whatever reason, just haven't run it through the car wash. But yeah, in the winter, no chance. Because yeah, that's, you get out there and because we get like those weeks where you get like 4 sunny days and you're like, I'm gonna wash the truck, and then sure enough you do. It rains. You hit a couple of mud puddles and you're like, what was that all for? What the heck are we doing? All right, that's gonna do it for the big show today. Hey, we made it to the end, everybody. All right. Thanks to Michael Shacker.